And I'll bring you a lovely panel of politicians, as this is the political debate at the end of the day. And the first one out is no less than Beathe Tvinnereim, who's the Minister for International Development, and she's the Deputy Chair of the Centre Party. Please give her a big hand on the way up. And the second one is Inge Ulstein, who's a former Minister of International Development. He's now a Member of Parliament and also a Deputy Chair of his party. A big hand to him too.
So many lists.
And then it's Ingjerd Schou. She's also a former minister, though not of international development, and she's a member of parliament and a former part of the parliamentary presidency, and she's a member of the Conservative Party. So here's the rainbow I give you today. I must start by saying that, debates on Norfund sometimes end up a little bit boring because there is a wide agreement along the spectre on support for Norfund that has been seen over the years. Mm. Some might say that the right side is part of the investment thinking, instead of giving money away in development aid, while the left wing would be more positive to the state ownership of the state ownership element that it has as the state as an actor. But nevertheless, we'll try to see whether the panelists disagree on something and really disagree. But we do not want to construct any disagreement here. And we'll also see where there is an agreement. It's important, I think, that this is also conveyed to you as an audience. Just as I said, there is a big agreement on Norfund as an instrument. Mm. And I'll start out by you, Beathe. We heard you earlier on today, and if I sum up what you say Norfund is in the right place, doing the right thing, and will do more of it in the future. So if I ask on the agricultural sector that we had the last panel on here, where the focus is on value chain development, do you think Norfund is in the right place when it comes to this?
I definitely think Norfund is in the right place when it comes to developing the agricultural sector. And just to let me take one step back. I mean, it's a great thing that we all in all agree so much on how to use Norfund as an instrument. I mean, that gives us predictability in terms of the job you're doing. So let's just state that as a good thing. When it comes to the agricultural sector, we have heard that throughout the years, it has been challenging to get results in the agricultural sector. Nevertheless, we know that the food production is, or the primary sector in Africa is where we know that the good wheels could start rolling, just as they did when we went through our modernization in our country. The modernization of African society or African industry needs to start from the primary sector. Africa imports some 50 billion US dollar worth of food today, and I am absolutely convinced that the potential for job creation and long value chains from the food producers in Africa to the consumer has a huge potential. And Norfund is in the right place, and they dare to take the necessary risks. And may I also say that I think that we can use Norfund and all the other actors in the Norwegian portfolio of development assistance even better in terms of getting the synergies out there, because we do a lot on renewable energy through other agencies as well. We work with private sector through NORAD, etc., and making sure that we strengthen those synergies within our toolbox is something I'm very busy with working on.
Right. That's great. What do you guys say? Ingjerd, in the food crisis that we see the world looming in the world today, do you think that Norfund is in the right place?
Yes, I do, but I also want to remind us all that Norfund is the Norwegian state what you call it, investment fund in developing countries. Norfund is there, and the aim is to create a job and also to prepare the welfare for people. And it's always a risk. But I want to be very clear that the risk is not a political issue. The risk of the investment for Norfund is on the table for the board. For Olav Svarva, I think it's not a political issue, but we have to also be realistic that as a politicians, because we are dealing with taxpayers' money and we are living our trust and we have to show also the result, but we also have to accept when Norfund is investing, there will be success histories, but also failure.
We'll come back to the risk element at a later of the debate. But Inge Ulstein, what do you say?
First of all, I think it's been really great to be here and just listen, because some of the colleagues from Norfund and also the partners, they just show how difficult it is. But they've been there, and to be honest, when we see the reports from the latest year and how Norfund has performed in the midst of this triple or whatever crisis that we're in the midst of, that's really impressive. The KPIs that when it comes to the African continent, working in the least developed countries, I think it's tremendous what you actually have achieved in the midst of the pandemic and everything. And a lot of other development banks and others, they have drawn out their investment, but you've stayed and you've done that. You took the risk and you succeeded. So I think it's a really good example. So they have managed, but there is so much more to do, because we see the hunger crisis, how to create these value chains that we heard so much in the latest panel. We need to do more around that. But you asked, are they on the right path? Kind of, we talk about Africa as one country, and it kind of stresses me out a bit, because there are so many different challenges. And we heard from DRC. In that country, it's not only one country. It's as large as whole Western Europe in one country. So I think what we heard from what this small amount of money actually could do for that family that got that loan in a microfinance institution, that made such a huge impact. So that's not wrong. It's not wrong to do those kind of things, but we also need to scale it up and to see the systems and the ecosystem that we also heard. So more of that, yes.
And you brought up banking as an element in the agricultural production. Since there are many smallholder farmers, there are also those who are a little bit bigger but not huge. What do you think about the role of the banking sector and Norfund's investment in the banking sector for the development of agriculture?
I think in many of Norfund's projects you can see the important connection between microfinance and agriculture. And we talked about technology. That's the way to access technology, how they actually can invest in solar panels, that they could charge their phones, that they could actually reach the markets and understand weather forecasts and the prices on the market. It's kind of so interconnected. So again, without that microfinance in the forefront, many of the other things in the value chain will have been broken from the beginning of. So I think it's really good to see how Norfund is working on both those kind of arms, but at the same time.
Increased productivity, Anne-Beate, would maybe lead to fewer farmers, do you think, in the future? But that might not be a political goal, I don't know.
Are we still on the agricultural? Yeah. All countries need to structure their primary sector, just as we did. And I believe that creating local value chains and local markets is a very important step on the way to restructuring or getting those farmers from subsistence farming to accessing a market, and from there restructuring. And again, Ulstein said, Africa is not one country. We know that also in agriculture there are different challenges. In Malawi, we know that the need for a new structure in terms of the farming communities and the sizes of the plots of land is absolutely maybe the most pressing issue. It might differ in other countries, but I truly believe that that is the key to development. And just 2 words about the banking sector as well, because I think it's so important what Norfund is doing there. In sub-Saharan Africa, 67% of the adult population is unbanked. 67% of the population. You know, we need that infrastructure for the whole ecosystem to work for consumers and for businesses. So I think it's really important.
I believe you were inspired then by the 21, the war for 21 million more that Faye were talking about in that panel. Just let's move over to somewhere where there might be a little bit more conflict, and that's on the climate fund and the funding of the new climate investment fund. And I believe that there are at least 2, but I believe 3 maybe smiling on the fact that you were able to develop the climate fund. But Inge Ulstein, you were one of those initiators and got it into your and presented it to the public on behalf of your government. What do you say? Does it succeed as you perceived it would succeed?
First of all, I think that the kind of funding mothers and fathers are most likely in the audience more than us politicians. But again, I think that was came at a really crucial time. On one hand, you had the different COPs in Glasgow and others, so the Norwegian government needed to have something in their bag over there, so we helped you out with something there. But again, this is what we need. And one of the things that I'm really concerned about is when we try to make everything, try to let everything fit into the development budget. And that's probably somewhere that we are not that much, we don't agree when it comes to that. Because we need to increase our climate funding. And we can't do that depending only on the development aid budget line. That will never, ever take us where we need to be. So that is why we struggled so hard discussing with our colleagues and with the finance department, try to kind of safeguard that and say, this is a really good investment. You don't need to think this as kind of regular ODA, kind of development aid or whatever. So that is something that I'm actually a bit sad about. Because if we continue to think about the climate fund in that way, I think we will lose a lot of integrity, a lot of skilled person engaged around this thing, and the identity around the fund. But I'm happy. Yes, I'm happy.
You're happy with the fund. Yeah. You're unhappy with the way it was financed. You say you're sad, but really you're looking at on Beathe and say this is not sustainable, right?
There's so many things around that's really good, and a lot of good things are still from those who are leading now. But yes, there's a huge difference.
But on Beathe, taking money from the pension fund that goes to investments in India, in emerging economies and rich economies, and moving it to the Norfund, the Climate Investment Fund. And then the one is on the development, I mean, like when it's in the climate fund, it's on the development budget and moves away other money. But while it's in the Norwegian Investment Bank and goes to those countries, it's not considered development aid. Is this really all right?
Are you all following here? It's getting technical.
Not all are following.
First of all, I agree and I disagree. My starting point is that I truly believe that we have to unite development and climate policy. They go hand in hand, and we shouldn't separate them. And then when I took office, I was presented with an argument that we are not sure whether the new climate investment fund can be defined as ODA. So that was the trouble that I was confronted with. Now we know that 100% of that is ODA, so it's really not a problem. So what we are really discussing is how big should my budget be? And I think we can agree on that. It should be really big, but it can fit the climate investment fund as well. But then again, I understand your concern, and that is why we have solved that concern with giving Norfund a new mandate. So you have a separate mandate. You have the traditional mandate, which is poverty reduction. And then we have adjusted a separate mandate for the Climate Investment Fund, which is more directed towards the mitigation issue. And that is another concern of mine. We really have to have two thoughts in our head at the same time when we talk about climate financing. Emissions reduction, mitigation, but at the same time investing in adaptation, which really is what many developing countries wants and ask for, and that is what the government has promised to provide, and that is also an important part of the portfolio and the investment portfolio of Norfund, especially on food security. There's a lot of climate adaptation in the food security portfolio.
But Ingjerd, if we take up the debate on where should the money go, you've raised some concerns that there is a reduction in other topics that you see coming.
Yes, I'm in the middle here, so I'm looking forward to the next state budget. Yeah. Really, but yes, I'm concerned. I'm also concerned about the debate of percent or 1.7 or 1% of the national budget and so on, because I think it's important to still continue to talk about what is the money going to and what is possible to get some results. But the impression of the government so far, and I look forward to the next state budget, as I said, is that the impression is that it isn't a reduction on this field, especially on education and health, and that's not especially in the Norfund's mandate, but it follows, and that's a reduction also on education and also on health, and after the pandemic and COVID situation, it's more needed than ever. And I think also that the impression is reduction, but it's also we do not have the thoughts and support from the government in thinking long terms and to be predictable, because it's on this field a huge reduction. But I really look forward to this. But we will fail also in the future. So I think the board of Norfund, you have to evaluate the risks of what kind of project you're going into. But it's also some results after the Solberg government that we reduced also the project, we reduced also countries we went into, and it was a huge better openness and also possibility to measure the results.
But Ingjerd, just a question to you, because you're saying that you're afraid if there is a cut down in some of the topics that you are concerned about. Yeah. Do you think it could also be negative to Norfund's, what could you say, standing if more money goes into Norfund while a lot of other money goes down?
No, I'm not so sure about that, because I think that Norfund's strength is to work with the national authorities, but Norfund also work with the private sector. And the alternative to not work with the private sector is a corrupt private sector. So I think, no, I'm not so afraid about that, because where I started was that the aim of Norfund is to create jobs, to prepare the welfare for the country, and in that long run, I think health and education also follows. So we have to think on both sides, I think.
Dag Inge, a final follow-up from you.
Yeah, you know, I think at the bottom line, it's the two mandates is really good. I mean it. And when it comes to the climate fund, we could have 10 times as much money. I think Norfund would have managed that, and there is opportunities, and it would be a perfect benefit for us, and we could reinvest those money. That's how it works. But it's the two mandates, and I think Jan said it, and I think I tried to wrote it down, and that was losing the battle of reaching the most marginalized ones. And again, Norfund is such an important tool when it comes exactly to reaching those, through creating jobs, through all the other things that we heard today, together with the whole ecosystem of reaching those who are most left behind, if I could say so. the NGOs, the other, civil society and others. So I really just urge Norfund on this 25th anniversary to continue that strong kind of focus on both these mandates, because they are equal importance and they are very different. They could look very different. So
let's go over to the dilemmas,
yeah,
because that has been a key topic here on the stage. Some of those dilemmas are, I think, is really interesting, because everyone says Norfund is a success, right? You earn money, but one of the questions that were raised, so to speak, on this agenda today was: is it earning too much? Is it really additional? Would it be a failure if now it's more successful, so to speak, than the pension fund? So is it too profitable in order to prove that it's actually additional in what it's doing? Is it taking enough risk? That's one of the questions that's been raised. Ingjerd, you said risk-taking is not really for the politicians. Risk-taking is really for the board and for the management of the company. But should Norfund take more risk than they are doing today to reach even further to those who are, what can you say, closer to those who are hardest to reach?
I think I leave that to Norfund's board. But I want to say that we as politicians also have to accept that you have some failure and do not succeed in every project, because it's part of the game, and it cannot be wrong to be successful. It cannot be wrong to earn money, but it is wrong to use money if you do not give the money back to create jobs and prepare welfare, because that's the aim of Norfund. So all the time, even if you earn money, Norfund has the same goal and the same aim. But I have to say it's a broader political debate, and I feel with Beathe, because she's sitting on the table in government now. I've been there myself. And we have a new situation this year. It's war in Europe, and defense and security situation in Norway, the rest of NATO, Europe and so on, will also will conquer with the money.
You go to the budget conference tomorrow, and we'll see all in October what happens there. Beathe, what do you? When you've already said that you agree that we should also invest more in development, but we'll see, right, in October. But I think that the risk question is a topic. Inge says that we'll stand up for Norfund when there is a need, and I think that
but you have to have openness.
Yeah, if you have transparency around. Yeah. But is there anything that you would not stand up for if Norfund does? If you say no, this passes the line. Here I would say, this I will not support.
As owner of Norfund, we will stand up for the very professional decisions taken by Norfund. And then if we feel that there is need for more safeguarding, then we will have that discussion. But I'd like to emphasize Inge's points. We want Norfund to take risks. It's your job. But then there is there is an equilibrium there, because you also need to make sure that you invest in profitable projects, because part of your mandate is to mobilize private capital. Yeah. And if the risk is too high, then you don't mobilize profitable or private capital, and that is the whole, that is really the core, because we are not going to reach our goals for development unless we get a lot more private capital on board. So, and that is Norfund's job. We have other instruments in my portfolio doing other things that don't have to worry about that. But for Norfund, that is so important, because we need you to mobilize private capital. And I'd also like to say that, whenever Norfund makes a profitable, or once an investment has become profitable, you sell straight away. And we had that, you told me about that, Tellef, we want to sell, because then we can reinvest that capital, and that is the whole point. So that's a win-win. It's a good wheel.
Dag Inge, final topic on the risk, because Anne from WWF said that it's not a dilemma between nature and climate. You just have to integrate both. I don't know, Dag Inge, is it easy to integrate both and be successful if the government says these are the places you can build wind farms and they're in trouble with nature in some way?
Oh, it's terribly difficult, that's for sure. So again, I think just the honest way that Norfund actually shows us these dilemmas. We saw that when they showed the film from Palma, from Mozambique. They shows that when they share the story from Myanmar, when we hear from DRC. And again, I think your question, perhaps it's yes. Perhaps they haven't taken enough risk when they do such a, when the returns are so high. I'm not sure, because it's the returns are probably a bit higher than we should expect it when we see back and the difficulties and the crisis. But so again, but that's not probably the right answer from our politicians. But we don't want to see money being wasted, as you say. So again, the politicians has to say, and we have to agree, and we have to say, this is a risk. We actually also need to see and to agree on having those failures amongst the way.
A final question to you all, and you could either point up or down or do flat line. I mean, like, if you look at what the kind of investment, the extra capital the Norfund has had over the last year, say the last year, would you want it next year to go up if your party decided, go flat, or go down? So please raise your hand
this
here.
Is the kind of the...
No, yeah, this is the
budget.
You first.
difficult question for her. You two other at least.
But do we get to explain why we do what we do?
No, we don't have time for that. So up,
Go up.
A little bit down, and flat. Well, you get the final 10 seconds for why a little bit flat down.
Because the world we are in a global crisis.
Right.
You know, there have been good times, profits have gone up. I want Norfund to stick around while other investors run away, because we are in the midst of a crisis. And we need Norfund to be stable, to stay out there, even though there are some tough times ahead.
That's
Right,
why the
so
climate
this
fund should be outside. That's for sure. Okay.
Here you got the final word, Dag Inge Ulstein, but give them a big applause for being honest politicians on the stage.